Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Rounding the Bases, presented by Community America Credit Union, invested in you. I can't believe that it is November, at least if you're listening to this around when it comes up. It is November. We're rapidly approaching Thanksgiving. The world is rapidly changing. And my guest today certainly is involved in some of that. He's always, I think, involved in something cutting edge. But first out, a shout out to my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City. I'm proud to partner with them and actually just did a recent event with them, another one coming up soon. If you are looking for a job, if you are looking to hire someone, if you are looking for just a good resource, great energy, check them out, chiefofstaffkc.com, making connections that matter. You can tell them I sent you. You don't have to tell them I sent you. It doesn't matter. There's nothing in it for me other than connecting good people. And my guest today is a connection from Wendy Hudson, my good friend over at Chief of Staff, one of my many good friends over there, which has led me to my guest, who has become a fast friend as well, meeting him in recent months. Today's guest is a serial entrepreneur whose innovative microtech platform brings the frontline to the forefront. His name is Tucker Graves, the CEO and co-founder of Pineapple Academy. Since 2018, he has supported deskless teams to get job ready faster, using short role-specific videos, precision-tailored to a range of industries. He's doing more than training. He's leading a movement that redefines how organizations build culture and support their teams one employee at a time. And the good news is he's here to explain exactly what I just said and beyond, because it's a really cool concept. He's knee-deep in it, and he's always knee-deep in something. I think I've learned that much about Tucker. Tucker, how are you?
I'm great. Good to see you.
When Wendy Hudson introduced us, it became very clear to me quickly, like a lot of very successful serial entrepreneurs, that you never slow down as much as maybe you might tell your wife you're going to, or your family you're going to. You never slow down. You're always thinking big. And I've learned this about you in a very humble way, that you've got to win. You set lofty goals and you're going to do it. Have I described you correctly to this point?
You have. It's actually, I was talking to somebody, one of my team members prior to getting on here and joining you today. And I had asked him, I said, Joel's asked me these questions that, kind of preps you for today. And one of them was like, what's your home run kind of in your mind? And we were kind of laughing about it, because I've been very fortunate. There's been a lot of home runs in my life. Great family. I come from a huge family. Great people I've worked with across, as you've mentioned, many companies that I've been involved with. But I tell you, the one you kind of nailed it on the head is this idea of you will achieve based on the goals that you set. And if you set the small goals, you'll achieve small goals. And I think the home run that we all need to keep in mind is the bigger the goal, the more out of reach it feels. It's amazing how quickly we set filters to what we will and won't do. Yesterday when we were at that thing over with Wendy, I thought it was interesting when he said, leaders are the ones that help us discern what is important. And I think that when you're setting these really big goals, that's exactly where your mind should go, is like, what is the most important thing to help me get there? So hopefully that kind of makes sense and parallels your description of me, because I believe that that's true for me.
Well, and I think that you're a think big kind of guy. And to your point, we may all have it in us, but whether we push ourselves or not. I mean, I think about it. I know you climb mountains, you do a lot of those type of things. There are probably more of us that have that in us that may never get there, whether we're not interested or whether we're not looking for more. And I think you've always been, just in getting to know you and what I could tell, a look for more kind of guy. I'm not saying in a greedy type of way. I'm saying in a challenge type of way, that you're constantly looking for a greater challenge. So you're going to keep pushing yourself. But it sounds like to me, in your background, that's what you saw growing up, right? I mean, you came from an entrepreneurial family, right?
Exactly. I've always been a believer, that we're kind of born to face our challenges, and it's a matter of it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so as opposed to waiting for them to come to me, what I like to do is, what is that one thing that's kind of in the back of my mind that maybe I'm afraid to do, and there's a little bit of a fear-based kind of apprehension to moving forward on something. I like to just go after them and tackle them. When I sold my last company, I took some time off, and I had kind of this year of not working and just trying to kind of figure out what was going to come next. And you mentioned mountain climbing. I had never climbed a mountain in my life. Matter of fact, I didn't really like heights. And so the very first thing I did is I joined a climbing gym, and I said, I'm going to go up a 32-foot wall on ropes that I have no idea how to do any of this. And I was probably the oldest guy in the room. But you know what? At the end of the day, I ended up climbing several mountains since then. And I don't know if my wife loves the idea of this, but anyway, yeah, I've been born with this idea of, we don't come from a position of fear. We come from a position of strength, and you just got to kind of hit it on the head.
So before we get into Pineapple, and there's a lot to talk about there, and that is your big venture right now. But it didn't start that way, and it never does for a serial entrepreneur. But I just think it's interesting that so much of your background is in a totally different industry, in the food industry. Tell me about that and the background with your family too, and how you went down that path.
Sure. Yeah. It's a funny story how I even ended up in food. My grandfather back in 1940, probably 45, 46, was working in Kansas, and he came home one day and he saw what he thought was like a dog or something crawling up to the house. And it was actually his wife, Evelyn. And Evelyn said, Johnny, I'm moving to Missouri. It's too windy in Kansas. You can come with me if you'd like, but I'm not living here anymore. And so fast forward, they ended up in this small town in northwestern Missouri called Chillicothe, Missouri. And John had been working in the meat industry, but really wanted to work in, for some reason, men's clothing. So he knocks on the door to the biggest house in Chillicothe, Missouri, and knew the gentleman from Rotary, and said, I'd really like to borrow $5,000 to open a men's clothing store. And the gentleman said, John, come in and sit down. And he said, well, what do you know about clothing? He said, I just love it. I've always wanted to do it. And he said, John, what do you do? And he said, well, I sell meat. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $5,000 to start a meat company, but I won't help you on the clothing deal. And so that's really how it started. So my grandfather started a manufacturing company in a small town, northwestern Missouri. My dad grew up there, and then basically said, Dad, why don't we put more things on the truck? And then he opened a distribution company, and then they expanded into multiple cities. And I grew up in Jefferson City, and I've been doing the food, kind of the supply chain side of things, Joel, since I could walk. I was scrubbing docks and grinding hamburger and doing things people wouldn't imagine. And just fell in love with the industry. And every company I've been involved with has at some degree been a touching point of food. And you're right, the one I'm in now, yes, food is what opened the door, but it has quickly become a software company that food is going to be one of things, but not probably even the primary eventually.
All right, so let's talk about this, because as I said before, I think serial entrepreneurs, successful serial entrepreneurs, there's always a next thing. At some point, there won't be a next thing. You and I talked about this. I remember talking about this with you. You were at a game at Kauffman Stadium. At some point, there won't be a next thing, but my guess is there'll always be some kind of a next thing. Maybe you slow down, but it's the way guys like you, men and women like you, are wired, and not everybody's that way. But what I always find interesting about serial entrepreneurs is, yes, that part of it, you don't necessarily know what that next idea is. Right? Like, there's no way that I could have told you 20 years ago that Pineapple Academy would be a thing. It would have been a concept that would have been a little bit more challenging to come up with back then anyway. I think that's got to be one of the most fun things, is that at some point there's an aha moment. And I don't know if, I've never asked anybody this before, I don't know if that aha moment comes when you launch, or when it's successful, or when you say, oh, that's the idea. Like, does that moment where it clicks happen before you're successful based on the idea? Or is the aha once it all comes together? There had to have been an aha moment for you with Pineapple Academy, I assume.
Yeah, it's like we're all familiar with the story of Amazon, right? It started as the largest book retailer online, right? And today, I'm sure if you look into the details of Amazon, the most profitable section of Amazon is probably their web services, which has nothing to do with shipping a product. And I don't know how many people even are aware of those letters AWS and what they mean. And I say that because we use AWS. But Pineapple, really, this particular company, like all my companies, start with an idea. And as you kind of mature through the process, what you're ultimately searching for is what is that minimal kind of viable product that gets people to say yes to kind of vote. I've always looked at as dollars as votes, and the more people believe in what you do, the more votes you get. And if you're not getting enough votes, and you have to go back to the people and say, what do I need to do to adjust to get more votes? And I've always told my kids, the world's always talking to you. The question is whether you're choosing to listen. And in business, it couldn't be more true. As long as you are constantly with your ears open and paying attention, you will look for, as I share with my team, I'm really good at identifying patterns. And once you find that pattern that just kind of seems easier, that's the gold vein you want to drill down. And so with Pineapple, it started out where we were creating content, and then somebody came along, a hospital system in the Dakotas, a large system, and said, hey, we love your content, but the software system that you've put your content on, we can't use that. We already have our own. Is there a way that you can somehow give us your content or stream your content into our platform? And that was the dawning of this company becoming a software company, not a content company. So hopefully that makes sense. But
Yeah.
it's that idea. You just have to kind of keep listening and finding the patterns of where it goes.
And the listening and the patterns took you to software companies. So let's talk about this. And I know you and I have talked about it. So I want you to explain it better than I'm going to explain it. I'll get better at explaining it as we go along myself. But, on the surface, people are going to look and say, wait a minute, is this like some version of YouTube? Is it like YouTube? And it's probably an injustice to even attempt to describe it that way because it's not right. It's just probably more of what we know. And so how is this different than YouTube? Well, let's just start with what this is. And I certainly want to send people to the website to check it out, pineappleacademy.com. They're located right here in Kansas City. But you get right from the founder here, you get the true explanation, because this is not YouTube really at all, is it?
No, it's not. YouTube, I don't know if you know the origin of YouTube. Another story of they thought they had a good idea and they went to another idea. YouTube was originally a dating site that failed. And what they found out of it, that minimum viable product, is they had a way to upload videos easier and quicker than any other platform. And so they decided to go with a video streaming platform, and timing was everything, right? If we didn't have certain flash players or technical things, I don't know, but the ability for the camera on your phone, it was all timing. And so when we look at YouTube and kind of the evolution of YouTube, there are parts of it, what you would consider, if I said our company is like YouTube, you might say, oh, well, I like to watch funny things on YouTube. They must do funny things. Somebody else might say, oh, YouTube, well, I learn a lot on YouTube. Matter of fact, me personally, Joel, I can fix things at my house that I have no idea how I fixed them. And if you would have given me a piece of paper with a script on it, I could have never fixed it. There's this idea of these kind of mirror neurons that it was explained to through a neuroscientist that said this idea of seeing it and being able to copy what we see. It's literally the old-fashioned kind of monkey see, monkey do, if you will. It's inherent in all of us. And that's why when we talk about we're YouTube-like in the educational part of it, and that we use these small, short, again, there's science behind the length of these videos. We really prefer kind of the length of a song, about 3.5 minutes on average. It's about the longest we're going to hold on to. And so when we kind of came out with this idea of these short kind of YouTube-like videos to train these frontline staff, and Joel, I don't know if you know, but we were kind of born out of COVID. Like, we had the idea, we started the company in 2019. We went to market in 2020, COVID hit. People loved it, but there was nobody to talk to. So we knew we had the right idea. We were just ahead of our time. And so we doubled down on content, and luckily we did, and we got ahead of the game early. But it is this idea that we are B2B, so from our business to your business in a YouTube approach, because businesses, they can't use YouTube really. Small ones could, but larger ones aren't going to use it. There's all kinds of privacy issues. There's concerns about what kind of content their employees are watching, or if there's, if it's relevant. There's no tracking of data and all these things. So our company has just continued to listen to what businesses need, especially developing these frontline staff that are, as you probably know, are so underserved in this area. I mean, so many of them, the turnover's high. The manager isn't somebody that wanted to be a manager. They're simply the one that survived. How many times have I walked into a big box store and the manager's 18 years old, and I ask them, I'm like, oh, did you really want to become a manager? And they're like, no, everybody else quit. And so there's this idea of how do we help these organizations with this high turnover gig economy produce some kind of consistent outcome with an inconsistent input. And that's kind of where we come in and kind of normalize it by saying, look, at the end of the day, all these kids are on their phones. They're used to TikTok. They're used to YouTube, short bites of information. Let's meet them where they are, and not only on their phones, on their feet, but let's meet them where they are also from an engagement standpoint. And we've all done the online training with PowerPoints. No thanks. We've all been handed a piece of paper, and science will tell you that probably less than 10% of people actually learn from reading alone. And then all these other kind of modals to learning, nothing works as effectively as a video.
And you mentioned quicker videos too. I mean, the reality of it is we're in the TikTok era. When you talk about the length of a song, remember in the 70s, the length of some of those classic rock songs that could go 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes. And you listen to them on the radio, you listen to them on a record player. None of that would exist anymore because of these cell phones, but there is still a way to do it, right? I mean, that's the listening and the responding to people, because if you're not producing these short videos, we're not taking care of those people as they come into the workforce.
No, you're 100% right. I tried to get my youngest to listen to Stairway to Heaven, and he laughed. He said, what is this, like 5 songs into one? I think it's like 11 minutes or something crazy, and I still believe it's considered one of the best songs ever. But, you're 100% right. The kids today, it is a very short attention span. There's a lot of information hitting them. They're used to, I mean, I don't even know if you know this, but like when my kids watch, the Royals play baseball, they're watching it more on probably YouTube highlights than they are the actual game. They multitask is kind of a false term, but they jump task around all the time. Right. And so if you can't get it to the point, I would even argue maybe even 90 seconds or less. We did a project recently with a large hotel group, and they said nothing longer than 90 seconds. And that makes sense to me. And, when you're on your feet and you're in this kind of frontline, kind of where we're focused on, the biggest thing with them is they just don't have time. And if it's not easy to use, they check out. And so we really focus on what are the friction points to learning and trying to train, these folks. And every time we come up with a new friction point, we're just about how do we keep removing it? How do we keep removing it?
This is it's on topic. It's just, I think you'll find it interesting because I've thought about this recently. When I was coming up in television and I'd have to edit all my own stuff, or if you were building a resume tape, things like that. And there was always sort of a rule that for any shot that you put down, it had to be a minimum of 3 seconds. Like to go under 3 seconds was really playing with fire because it wasn't long enough. And now if you look at videos, and I'm not talking necessarily about the videos that you're doing, but it's going to prove the same point. When you look at some kind of an edited sizzle reel, anything that you're seeing on social media, shots rarely go more than 2 seconds because of our attention span is like that. So I'm curious, and I know that you nerd out on some of the neuroscience stuff. I know that you're constantly looking for the perfect way to do things. And I do believe in what you're doing at Pineapple Academy, that this is going to massively help companies, especially with the younger people. But oh, by the way, and I want to be very careful about this. As we get older, our attention spans are going down as well because of the surroundings. It takes a lot more effort to sit down and read a book and put away the distractions. It's still possible. And I would argue that we still need to be able to do some of that. But look, you look anywhere you go in public, we're all guilty of being on those phones and doing all of those things too. My point being that if you can't find the right pace for these videos, people are going to tune out. I think once a year we get one of those, training harassment type of things, within and we all get them, right? And it's fine. I mean, that to me, the part is like, wait, didn't we do this last year? And I'm not, but I understand it. Like you got to there's compliance and you got to take care of things, but it's long and it's boring. And I know that like a harassment training is not supposed to be fun, but they could make it easier. And oh, by the way, more digestible by making it quick, but they're not doing it for, the way that you're doing it. Right. So how do you find that? How do you, from a neuroscience standpoint, figure out the pace and what's going to keep people?
Yeah. I wanted to touch really quick on your compliance and training videos. Unfortunately, a lot of that is just CYA for legal risk mitigation purposes, and we need to do these things. They are the right things to do. We don't want these things to happen. I would argue, though, after we check the box that person completed it, did they learn anything? How many people do I know that take continuing education units while watching a ball game and keep guessing or hitting forward till it's over? I mean, sorry, honey, but my wife does it. And so we're not really learning. What we're doing is checking a box to say, hey, we did what we were supposed to do, and this hour-long or 2-hour-long. And that's really a top-down, unfortunate decision. The governments and the states we're in, they're making the decision that those are time-based competencies, not some kind of competency of actual knowledge. And so it's going to take eventually some changing at the top and how we teach and how we approach these subjects. But I think when we look to science, and so we partner with a gentleman, he's a PhD, he calls himself a learning futurist. He's at our annual events every year. He's our favorite speaker. You'll hopefully get to meet him this next June at our event. And so Dr. Tim, funny about him, he said, Tucker, if I was to design a system, I would design it just like Pineapples has done. And I said, well, that's a great compliment. I said, but why? And he said, you've really focused on the idea of just keeping it this kind of simple approach to quick bites of learning. And he'll get into some technical things I'll probably mispronounce, but it's this idea that when you go on the internet today and you look at something, how many times do you start on looking at something, but then you'll see something else? And then all of a sudden, an hour later, you've rabbit holed down this thing. And it like this morning, I was looking at a coffee maker. And I did not start looking at coffee makers, but the next thing you know, an ad came up and I'm an hour deep into coffee makers. And it's this idea is, how do we strike the nerve of finding the thing that we are inherently interested in? And you could also almost challenge our children to go in and say, okay, it's college or whatever your path is. What are you going to do the rest of your life? And they're like, I don't even know. So there's some way we have to tap into this idea that we have to expose them to these new skills and these new things, as we learned yesterday, right? It starts with knowledge, goes to skills, goes to experience, goes to expertise. How do we expose them in such a way that, number one, it doesn't prevent them to wanting to go further? How many people have sat in a classroom and didn't want to raise their hand for fear of looking stupid?
Yeah.
A lot of people. So I think when you approach learning from this perspective, and Pineapple, I don't know if you know this, but we named the company originally because we were going to focus on the food service industry, and it's kind of this symbol of hospitality. But I met a young lady who did a TED Talk, and she's actually going to help me one day do a TED Talk. And she said her definition of hospitality is anticipating the needs of the individual. And so when we talk about Pineapple Academy, it's really not this idea of food and hospitality, but the definition of hospitality is, how do we anticipate how that individual learns and meeting them where they are? Because for you, it might be audio. For me, it might be visual. For somebody else, it might be reading, and we do subtitles. I don't know about you. I can hear just fine, but I now have subtitles on every channel, on every TV, because my kids want it on. I don't even know why, but they do. And we can now also, with the help of AI, we can transcribe into 27 languages for not only subtitles, but we can also do it in voiceover. And so we're really trying to meet them where they are is the biggest goal for us, and this kind of maybe this neuroscience answer for you.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is really cool too, because if I end up doing some videos and we do some things together, and I think we're going to, that I'm suddenly going to be speaking Indian and Chinese and all these languages I've never even studied, right?
That's right. We did a pilot that led to a launch with Rush Hospital up in Chicago, and they had some Mandarin speaking folks, and we were a little nervous about it, right? It's AI generated, and they came in and they're like, yep, good enough. And 3 people that spoke Mandarin, I believe, were on their kind of environmental services team and came in and validated that it worked, and they were blown away that they could have content that they could create that would then be able to now connect to these people that they've not been able to meet them where they are.
It's remarkable. It really is. And it's so cool to see where all of this is going. Before I get to my baseball themed questions, and we'll get to that home run then, among the others, just to explain to people how this works. I'm so-and-so company. I get a hold of Pineapple, and suddenly I am ready to have my team start to jump on this micro learning platform. How does it work?
Yeah, sure. You know, like I mentioned, we started out as content. So they go to our website, they have interest, they contact us, normal deal. What will happen next is we will have this conversation around what problem are you trying to solve? What's the most important problem to your company? And any organization, we met with a company yesterday, everybody starts with that, what opens the door for us to work together? And then as we work together more, we find more problems to solve. And I think the core of most companies' problems are going to find it at the level of training, because it's all about people. And if if the people are properly motivated and they're not moving, then the only other answer is then they're probably not adequately trained. So when we look at this conversation, it always starts with what is the knowledge we're trying to pass on? And then once we kind of understand the knowledge, we have some that's been built. We have around 1,000 videos that are compiled in different ways that companies will use them. But if our content, and most companies will try to start with what we have, because the assumption of producing content can be difficult. You and I've talked about it. But the advancement today with the ability to go somewhere online like an Amazon and spend a couple $100 to get a ring light and a microphone and a tripod has lowered the bar for the investment, because our phones are adequate enough now to shoot these videos. Mm-hmm. Then it gets into, well, how do I edit it? And how do I put it together? We've built kind of a network of solutions partners, we call them, of people that help you on these things that create friction for you to develop the content. And then once we get past this content discussion, Joel, then we talk about, well, how are we going to meet them in the workflow? Where do they need to access this information? Do they have a learning management system for onboarding to keep HR happy that we want to stream it in there so they can check it? Is there a QR code on the wall so that in case they forgot what they learned in onboarding, they can quickly go back and reference? Or maybe from a safety perspective, it's on a piece of equipment and, kind of wherever that goes. So there's a hybrid approach on the accessibility. And then the final piece is, how do we measure the engagement? Because the engagement's where the learning happens. If I'm not engaged and I'm watching a football game while I'm doing my continuing education, I'm not learning. So we all have data and reports and feedback, but that's really the part I think that what you'll find is when you change the way you do your training from paper or, hey, I told you how to do that, when you kind of use this new video approach, the engagement level just goes up automatically, because again, we're speaking their language, we're addressing all the different modalities of learning. And I think the data will show you that what's funny with us, the biggest friction, it isn't the users, it's the decision makers. Once you get it in the hands of the users, all of a sudden, because we're growing right now more by word of mouth than anything, and it's the users that are telling the decision makers, you got to look at this.
It's cool stuff. It really is. Again, pineappleacademy.com. Let's get to the baseball theme questions. You've done a lot in your career. So what was the answer you came up with outside of your family and the personal? On the business side of things, what's the biggest home run that you've hit?
Well, we spoke to it a little bit, and it's about setting those goals. And even with this company, I had initially set a goal for the company because I believe in goal setting. It's why I climb mountains. It's easy because it's one way up. That's the goal. And so, for me, I think the biggest home run for me was changing my mindset to even bigger goals. And my team laughs when I say those things because they're just like, no way. And I said, okay, well, let's quickly get to what you're going to stop doing and what you're going to start doing to hit that goal. And I think that, I could tell you there's probably financial home runs or there's different things of what I've done. But I think it's mindset for me, Joel, is my biggest home run. Is just, I think in life we achieve what we set our goals to be. And if you set maybes and small goals, that's what you're going to get.
I just saw the other day, Will Guidara did a keynote for the Kansas City Area Development Council's annual meeting, and he's a producer on the show The Bear, and he's got the #1 restaurant in the world, or at least they want, and his book Unreasonable Hospitality. It's the same thing when they went. I mean, the very short of that story is they went to this competition or whatever, top 50, and they announced the 50 down to 1, and it was the first year there, and they had the best food and one of the top restaurants in New York, and vying to be the best in the world, and they finished 50 out of 50. And he went back and they took all of their staff and all their people, they shut the restaurant down, and he challenged them to come up with touch points and new ideas. And when they got to something like 50, he said, okay, let's do more. And he was able to push them. And every time they thought that they had, it's kind of like climbing that mountain, right? Every time that they thought they were there, They kept going further and further and further and further until it was something like 130 touch points or whatever the number was. And it's kind of like what you're saying, like, wait a minute, I thought we reached the top. Nope, let's keep going and going. So it's a mindset, right?
It is, and that's where leadership comes in, right? Like we kind of heard yesterday a little bit in that talk, but it really starts at the top. And the top has to understand that people are the most important thing. I mean, we can't go anywhere without our people as individuals and then as team members. And like we learned yesterday, that trust kind of starts, and then that belongingness, and it all kind of builds up. And so if the person at the top doesn't have the right mindset and the right goal setting and discernment of what is important, how can the company get anywhere?
Yeah. Okay. How about a swing and a miss? And what did you learn from it? Serial entrepreneurs have lots of swings and misses.
Yeah, I've done other podcasts and I've talked about the financial swings and misses. And so I think I'm going to pivot a little bit on that because they've all been humbling experiences. But I think the biggest swing and miss that I've had is that there are times in my life where I've forgotten the importance of communication, and alignment, these points of clarity where you will make assumptions that people are on board. And they aren't. And so I've always been a big believer in process. And there are times when I have made the wrong hire and I haven't taken the time. I would tell you that my biggest thing is you've met me. My mind is fast. I go fast. And I have paid the price personally and professionally sometimes for making too quick of a decision. And so by bringing in people more into the decision making, more of an inclusive approach has really helped me. That's what I've probably learned out of that more than anything, is just really making sure, because I will sometimes make a decision and kind of share that with the team. And because the team didn't go through the process of the decision making, they'll say yes because I'm the boss, but they really don't buy into it. And so it's been a great learning curve for me to really try to adopt processes that by including them, the output is more alignment.
Good stuff. And how about small ball for you? The little things that add up to big results.
I can't say anything other than the importance of communication and making sure that these individuals that we work with, that we speak their language and we recognize all of them as individuals, because our systems cannot stereotype. We can't stereotype with anything in our life. These people are all individuals, all fighting their own personal battles. And if we don't focus on that and keep that in mind, because just because we think the way we think, or 90% of them think one way, we have got to make sure that the systems and the strategies that we put in place not only encourage, but support individuality.
Find me a company with good culture that doesn't have that. There isn't.
That's right. That's right. Now I got a new buzzword for you. I have heard that we are now advancing from the word culture to community.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. Kind of plays into a little bit of what we heard yesterday, right? Yeah. This idea of belongingness and feeling of community, and culture is a thing, and community is a belongingness, a tribe, if you will.
I like it. I'm totally on board with that, other than the fact that the word community now is going to get completely overused. But it'll at least give us a break from talking about culture. The event that Tucker's referring to was a chief of staff that he and I were at yesterday, and I spoke, and Dr. Etienne van der Walt, who's a phenomenal neuroscientist out of South Africa, spoke. And so it was really, really interesting. We had a great group of people there. All right, 4 final questions as we round the bases. First one is this: because you climb a lot of mountains, there has to be some type of a bucket list, something that you still want to do. I could ask you that for business, but I'm going to focus more on that side of things. What's the bucket list thing that you want to do that your wife won't kill you for doing?
I recently got married about 3 years ago to an amazing young lady, and it was funny. I've always wanted to climb one of those big, 8,000 meters over there in the areas where people don't survive. And so I have been taken off the bucket list of Everest in exchange for she won't get a cat. So our prenup is I can't climb Everest and she can't get a cat. The good news is there's still 13 other ones over there. So I would like to, as a bucket list, if I can, safely, always with a guide, climb as many of the top peaks on each continent that I could after Pineapple, whenever that is.
All right. I can't wait to hear about it. Just no Everest. Second question, we'll go more business on this one. The beach ball mentality. Tell me about that.
The beach ball?
Yeah, I read this. I don't know. Maybe I got wrong information on this. Beach ball mentality in business. If you hold up a multicolored ball, one person would see three colors.
Yeah.
Ashley does some great research. No, this could be from 50 years ago. I don't know.
No. It goes back and speaks to the individuals. We were just talking about the small ball. I was at one of our clients' conferences down in Tennessee. I think we were in Knoxville or Gatlinburg or somewhere. And a great consultant gave a great talk. And we do this, actually. I have one on my desk. Is that if you've ever held up one of those multicolor beach balls, what's interesting is if I were to hold it up right now, I would probably see red or blue or white or yellow. But what are you seeing? Orange, green, maybe white, maybe a little bit of blue. So the beach ball kind of mentality it goes back to what I literally just said about this idea that we're all individuals and we all kind of see things differently. We have to use the beach ball in communication to remind ourselves, just because I see red and green and white, you could be seeing blue, orange, and white, or some version of that. So the beach ball is a great thing to kind of help us bring us back to this core that we're not all the same and we talk different ways and we interpret different ways.
It's a great visual, even, you see that beach ball to remind you that yes, we are all, it seems so basic and so obvious. It's not. I try to remember that in the baseball world all the time as well. Like, it's so easy to lump these guys into all being athletes, and they are no different or as different as the rest of us. You walk into a baseball clubhouse and you might have 26 guys, but they're from different backgrounds, different language. Some are introverts, some are extroverts, some are, whatever it is, on and on. It's no different than anything else. All right, my third question, I'm going to go more lighthearted on this one. And this one is impressive to me as a fan of rap music. Is it true that you are an excellent rapper? And if so, is there, like, sometimes it's a fun question to ask people, like, hey, if you love karaoke, what's your go-to karaoke song? Are you like a karaoke rapper type? Or where does this love of rap come from?
So I mentioned my fast mind. If I remove the filter, that fast mind can speak out loud. And so when I have two young boys, well, not young anymore, but I have two boys, and when they were growing up, we would ride in the car. One might be sick or something, ear infections, crying, whatever. And I would try to kind of ease the moment by coming up with funny stories. And so every now and then it might require a glass of wine or a beer, but you catch me in the right mood. No, I just simply freehand whatever's in my mind comes out. And there was recently a America's Got Talent show where they had a gentleman where you could hand him like 5 different words and he would create this entire rap. I could do that. I mean, that's
wow. You could, if you didn't have other things going on, start like a really fun YouTube channel or something like that and do that. Right. But I'm not sure that you want to go that route at this point. You got some other things going on. But
not at this point, no.
So this is less of a karaoke skill and maybe more of a party trick, so to speak.
Yeah.
With the right amount of wine or liquid courage.
That's right. That's right.
I'm not going to put you on the spot. All right, final question as we round the bases. My walk-off, because you're the big goal setter, because I know you think about this a lot, maybe every day, I don't know. Where do you believe Pineapple Academy is going? What does this look like in the future?
Whether it's Pineapple Academy or companies that mirror it, which is always the greatest form of a compliment, is when you find competition. Because, our competition today, there's a lot of alternatives to what we do, but there isn't a Lyft versus Uber yet for Pineapple. Matter of fact, we spend most of our time explaining what the heck we are. Is that I truly think, whether it's Pineapple Academy or some copy of it, is that we are going to meet these individuals where they are. And I think that organizations today that have quote unquote digital documentation of processes and checklists will start moving. And I think with the help of AI, Joel, we're going to get there a lot faster, where we're going to document these expectations, it's probably a simple way to put it, or processes, in a way that everybody can learn in their own native language, in their own learning modality. I think it will become the next wave, as he mentioned yesterday, the next revolution of changing how we train and educate our folks. So I think it will be global.
The world is changing rapidly. Pineapple Academy is and will be a part of that. pineappleacademy.com. Can't wait to see where this is all going. And it's, I know, moving very fast, and it's going to be really exciting. It is really exciting. The whole world right now. It's scary, exciting, fun, and it's not slowing down, whether people want it to or not. This is where things are going. There's so many other discussions on that, but so glad that we have been able to connect, and appreciate Wendy for that introduction, and to see where this is going. And thanks so much, Tucker, for spending time today on Rounding the Bases.
Yeah, thanks for letting me join you.
It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.